The quantum laboratory hummed with an electrical silence that Dr. Arya Chen had long since learned to ignore. Holographic displays flickered around her, a constellation of data points dancing in soft blue light. Her fingers, calloused from years of delicate scientific work, traced the edge of a worn photograph. Her father, Dr. Michael Chen, smiling beside an incomprehensible piece of equipment from decades past. Outside the reinforced windows of the Quantum Horizon Research Facility, the world remained blissfully unaware of the judgment that had just been cast. The encrypted transmission arrived without warning, a digital whisper that would change everything. Most researchers would have dismissed it as another security protocol or system test. But Arya was different. The moment the quantum decryption algorithm began parsing the message, her breath caught in her throat. Galactic Transmission Protocol Alpha 9. Classified. Eyes only. The holographic display shifted, revealing a panoramic view of the Interstellar Council chamber. 237 delegates from across the known galaxy, each representing civilizations that had spent millennia conquering, trading, and negotiating. Their collective gaze was fixed on a singular item of discussion: Earth. To the Zorn representative, humanity was nothing more than a statistical anomaly. A young species occupying a resource-rich planet, technologically primitive but showing concerning rates of advancement. To the silicon-based crystalline collective, humans were chaotic, unpredictable, a potential viral threat to galactic stability. Species classification vote initiated, announced a translucent AI moderator, its voice a perfect harmony of multiple alien languages. Proposed classification: subjugation-level civilization. The vote was clinical, sterile. Each delegation's representative activated their voting interface with bureaucratic precision. Green lights flickered. Affirmative. Red lights emerged. Negative. The overwhelming majority blazed green. 237 civilizations. 223 votes for subjugation. What they didn't know was that the very transmission carrying their decision was being analyzed by something unexpected. Buried within her father's final research notes was an experimental quantum AI algorithm, a digital sentinel that had been quietly collecting data, learning, waiting. Arya's fingers trembled as she realized the transmission contained more than just a voting record. Embedded within the data stream were detailed invasion protocols, technological assessments, and something her father had always suspected but could never prove: a fundamental flaw in how these alien civilizations perceived potential. "Oh, Dad," she whispered, pulling up a holographic reconstruction of his last unfinished research project. "What did you see?" The quantum eye, which she had lovingly named HFY, began processing the transmission. Its quantum neural networks, a breakthrough her father had been working on before his mysterious death, started correlating data points that no conventional system could connect. Earth wasn't just another potential conquest. It was something else entirely. Outside the laboratory, the world continued its mundane rhythms. Coffee shops buzzed. Traffic moved. Children played, completely unaware that their entire civilization had just been sentenced to slavery by a cosmic bureaucracy that saw them as nothing more than a resource to be harvested. Arya Chen stood at the precipice of humanity's first true test, and she was about to make sure the galaxy would never forget the day they underestimated Earth. The first wave hit at 3:47 hours GMT, a moment of surgical precision that would be forever etched into human memory. Jake Rodriguez was on night patrol in the Arizona desert when the sky simply broke. Massive crystalline ships materialized without warning, their surfaces absorbing and refracting light in ways that defied physical understanding. These weren't the crude metal behemoths of human science fiction. They were living machines, organic and mechanical simultaneously, designed with a cold mathematical perfection that made human engineering look like child's play. In New York, the communication grid collapsed within seconds, not through brute force, but through an infinitely complex digital assault that surgically dismantled network after network. Cell towers, satellite communications, internet backbones, all reduced to silent ghosts in less than 3 minutes. The Vorax Imperium didn't believe in wholesale destruction. Destruction was wasteful. They believed in systematic subjugation. Deep within the quantum research facility, Area Chen watched in horrified fascination as PHOE&IX began analyzing the invasion protocols in real time. The AI wasn't just observing, it was learning, adapting, preparing a response that no alien invasion algorithm could anticipate. "They're not here to destroy us," Area muttered, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces. "They're here to control us." The invasion wasn't a military operation. It was a precision strike designed to break human will. Major infrastructure targets fell first: power stations, communication centers, transportation hubs. But instead of total destruction, the aliens implemented a strategy of calculated disruption. Hospitals remained functional. Basic utilities flickered but didn't collapse completely. It was psychological warfare at a planetary scale. In Sao Paulo, Maria Santos watched from her apartment window as hover drones systematically mapped her neighborhood. They moved with an almost beautiful precision, scanning every building, every street corner. Not destroying. Cataloging. Military responses were swift but ineffective. Traditional weapons seemed like Stone Age tools against the alien technology. F-35 fighters disintegrated before they could even lock onto targets. Naval vessels found their systems simultaneously overridden and neutralized. But humanity had something the aliens couldn't comprehend: unpredictability. Small pockets of resistance emerged in the most unexpected places. A group of high school robotics students in Detroit began reverse engineering captured drone technology within hours of the first attack. In rural India, a network of farmers used centuries-old communication methods that completely bypassed the digital networks the aliens were targeting. Jake Rodriguez, the Arizona patrol officer, discovered something extraordinary. The alien scanning technology had a fundamental weakness. It relied on predictive algorithms that couldn't process truly random human behavior. By moving in patterns that defied logical prediction, he and a growing group of survivors began to create blind spots in the alien surveillance. Back in the research facility, PHOE&IX was compiling data at a quantum processing speed that would have been impossible just weeks earlier. Aria realized her father's final project wasn't just a research algorithm. It was a key, a potential weapon against an invasion no one had anticipated. "They think they know us," Aria whispered, watching the global invasion map. "But they have no idea what's coming." Outside, the first day of the invasion was ending. The world had changed forever, and humanity was just beginning to show its teeth. The global research network formed like a living organism, invisible to alien surveillance, but more intricate than any system the invaders could comprehend. Dr. Area Chen's quantum lab had become the neural center of humanity's technological resistance. What began as a small team of researchers had exploded into a decentralized, global collaboration that defied every conventional approach to scientific innovation. In an abandoned server farm outside Mumbai, Vikram Mehta, a 23-year-old network engineer, had created a communication protocol that existed between the gaps of electromagnetic spectrum. It was a digital guerrilla network that the alien systems couldn't detect, couldn't predict, couldn't interrupt. "We're not trying to match their technology," Aria explained during the encrypted quantum conference call that simultaneously existed and didn't exist. "We're going to break their understanding of technology entirely." PHOE&IX had become more than an AI. It was a collaborative intelligence, drawing insights from thousands of researchers, engineers, and inventors across the planet. Each contribution, whether from a MIT quantum physicist or a teenage hacker in Buenos Aires, was instantaneously analyzed, integrated, and transformed. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a marine biologist in the Galapagos, discovered that the alien scanning technologies had a fundamental weakness when confronted with complex, nonlinear biological systems. Her research on endemic island species, organisms that had evolved in isolation, provided a critical insight. Complex adaptive systems were humanity's secret weapon. In a converted high school gymnasium in Detroit, the robotics team that Jake Rodriguez had first encountered was now a critical research hub. They had captured fragments of alien drone technology and were systematically dismantling its core architectural principles. What the aliens saw as absolute technological superiority, the humans saw as a puzzle waiting to be solved. "Look at the quantum entanglement matrix," whispered Marcus Chen, Aria's younger brother and a brilliant quantum mechanics prodigy. "It's not a closed system. It has vulnerabilities." The alien invasion protocols were designed with a fundamental assumption that technological advancement followed a linear, predictable path. They had categorized humanity as a primitive civilization based on traditional metrics of technological development. They didn't understand that human innovation wasn't about linear progression. It was about radical, unpredictable transformation. Vikram's network protocol was just the beginning. In research labs, makeshift workshops, and hidden communication centers around the world, humanity was conducting a form of technological jiu-jitsu. They weren't fighting the alien technology. They were learning its language, understanding its fundamental limitations, and then systematically creating technologies that existed outside its comprehension. HFY was evolving with each contribution. What had started as an experimental quantum AI was becoming something else entirely, a distributed intelligence that drew strength from human creativity, unpredictability, and collective problem-solving. Aria watched the global research map, a living, breathing visualization of human potential. Thousands of simultaneous research streams, each one a potential breakthrough, each one a middle finger to the galactic bureaucracy that had voted to enslave them. "They thought we were a resource to be harvested," she muttered, watching a new quantum algorithm take shape. "We're about to show them we're the ones who do the harvesting." Outside the research facility, the world was changing. The invasion was no longer just a military conflict. It had become a battle of imagination, of potential, of a species discovering its true capabilities. Psychological warfare had always been humanity's most potent weapon. They just didn't know it yet. In the mountain villages of Nipple, an old woman named Karma Sherpa understood something fundamental that would become critical to humanity's survival. When the alien drones first appeared over her village, scanning and cataloging, she gathered the community and began to do something completely unexpected. They started to dance. Not a choreographed resistance, not a strategic maneuver, just pure, chaotic, human celebration. Children, elders, entire families moving in patterns that defied any logical analysis. The alien surveillance systems, designed to predict and categorize human behavior, began to malfunction. Simultaneously, in the favelas of Sao Paulo, a different kind of resistance was emerging. Maria Santos, a community organizer with a background in social psychology, had realized that the aliens' invasion protocols were built on rigid, hierarchical understanding of social structures. So they made their community incomprehensible. Neighborhoods reorganized themselves constantly. Leadership became fluid. Communication happened through methods that couldn't be tracked: elaborate hand signals, musical codes, children's games that shifted rules with every iteration. What looked like chaos to the aliens was actually the most sophisticated adaptive network imaginable. Dr. Aria Chen watched these developments through HFY's distributed intelligence network, understanding something profound was happening. "They're trying to categorize us," she explained to Jake Rodriguez during one of their encrypted communications. "But humans aren't a system to be understood. We're a living, breathing paradox." The aliens had conquered civilizations by understanding their fundamental psychological patterns. They mapped social structures, predicted responses, neutralized resistance before it could begin. Every species they had encountered followed predictable evolutionary paths of conflict and submission. Humanity broke every single one of those rules. In Detroit, the high school robotics team that had begun reverse engineering alien technology took their resistance to another level. They started broadcasting random signal patterns, not to communicate, but specifically to confuse. Mathematical sequences that followed no discernible logic. Music compilations that mixed genres in ways that would make traditional algorithms short-circuit. HFY was learning. With each bizarre human response, the quantum AI was building a new understanding of adaptive intelligence. The aliens had created an invasion protocol, assuming rational, predictable responses. Instead, they found themselves facing a species that weaponized unpredictability. Military strategists discovered something shocking. Traditional combat training became less effective. The most successful resistance groups were those that abandoned conventional warfare. Dancers, musicians, social workers, community organizers, people who understood human complexity at its most fundamental level. In the Siberian tundra, a group of indigenous reindeer herders used centuries-old survival techniques that completely bypassed technological tracking. In the Australian outback, Aboriginal tracking skills became a critical tool of resistance that no alien technology could comprehend. Karma Sherpa's village continued to dance. The favelas of Sao Paulo remained in constant, beautiful chaos. Teenagers in Detroit kept broadcasting their impossible signals. And the aliens began to feel something they had never experienced before. Fear. The battle for Earth would be remembered as the moment humanity redefined the concept of warfare. It began in the most unexpected location, the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva. What the aliens didn't know was that the research facility had been transformed into something far more than a scientific installation. It was now the epicenter of humanity's most audacious counterstrike. Dr. Aria Chen stood beside Jake Rodriguez, watching as HFY integrated the final pieces of their unprecedented strategy. Around them, a global team of scientists, military strategists, hackers, and innovators had created a weapon that defied every conventional understanding of conflict. "They think in linear systems," Aria muttered, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. "We're about to show them what nonlinear really means." The Vorax battle cruisers approached Earth with clinical precision. Their invasion protocols had been successful across hundreds of civilizations. Systematic, methodical, unstoppable. Until now, the first wave of alien drones found themselves navigating a battlefield that constantly rewrote its own rules. Quantum entanglement algorithms developed by Aria's team created localized reality distortions. Computational systems designed to predict human movements suddenly found themselves tracking targets that existed in multiple potential states simultaneously. In the skies above major cities, fighter pilots discovered something extraordinary. The captured alien drone technologies they'd been modifying didn't just work. They worked in ways the original designers could never have anticipated. A fighter pilot in Tokyo could instantaneously communicate tactical information with a ground team in Brazil through a communication network that didn't technically exist. Marcus Chen, Aria's brother, had discovered the critical weakness in the alien invasion strategy. Their technological superiority relied on absolute predictability. But human technology, enhanced by HFY, had become something else entirely, a living, breathing, adaptive system. The battle wasn't just about physical combat. It was a multi-dimensional conflict that stretched across technological, psychological, and quantum domains. Vikram Mehta's communication network transformed military communication. Information moved like liquid, changing form, splitting, merging, becoming impossible to track or intercept. Military units operated with a level of coordination that seemed almost telepathic. "We're not fighting their war," Jake Rodriguez explained to his tactical team. "We're fighting a war they can't even comprehend." The Large Hadron Collider became something more than a research facility. It was now a massive quantum computational center, its massive energy redirected into creating localized reality disruptions that completely neutralized alien targeting systems. In the favelas of Sao Paulo, in the mountain villages of Nepal, in the Australian outback, everywhere the aliens had thought they could predict human behavior, resistance cells struck with surgical precision. Each attack was unique. Each response was impossible to categorize. The Vorax command ship watched in growing horror as their invasion protocols collapsed. Entire squadrons of drones simply disappeared, not destroyed, not disabled, simply removed from comprehensible reality. HFY was learning, adapting, evolving with each microsecond of the conflict. Area Chen watched the battle unfold, understanding they had crossed a threshold. This wasn't just about defending Earth anymore. This was about showing the galaxy what humanity could truly become. "We're not a resource to be harvested," she whispered. "We're the harvesters." The offensive began with a whisper, not a roar. Deep within the Interstellar Council's most secure communication hub, a seemingly innocuous data packet appeared. To the alien systems, it looked like a routine transmission. But HFY was anything but routine. Dr. Area Chen watched the holographic display with a cold, calculated intensity. Each line of code was a weapon, each algorithm a strategic strike that would expose the fundamental rot at the core of the galactic hierarchy. "We're not just fighting," she explained to Jake Rodriguez during their encrypted communication. "We're revealing the truth." The first wave of the counteroffensive targeted the bureaucratic infrastructure of the Interstellar Council, not through brute force, but through surgical precision. Classified communications were released. Historical records of previous conquests were broadcast across every available communication channel. Vikram Meta's communication network became a weapon of mass revelation. Species that had been conquered generations ago suddenly had access to the full documentation of their subjugation. The Vorax Imperium's carefully maintained narrative of peaceful expansion began to crumble. In the research facility, Marcus Chen discovered something more explosive than any physical weapon. The alien invasion protocols contained comprehensive records of previous conquests, a galactic ledger of oppression that had remained hidden for centuries. "They've been doing this for millennia," Marcus muttered, his fingers racing across quantum decryption interfaces, systematically identifying, categorizing, and subjugating entire civilizations. The counteroffensive wasn't just military. It was a comprehensive dismantling of the alien power structure. Captured alien technologies were rapidly adapted. A drone design meant for surveillance became a communication node. A weapon system was transformed into a method of releasing encrypted historical records. Human innovation turned the invaders' own tools against them. On the edges of known space, previously conquered species began to receive transmissions, documentation, proof of their own histories that had been systematically erased. The Crystalline Collective watched in growing horror as their carefully maintained illusion of galactic order began to disintegrate. Jake Rodriguez led a special operations team that targeted the most critical alien infrastructure. But their targets weren't military installations. They were communication centers, historical archives, bureaucratic strongholds. Each strike was designed to expose, not destroy. HFY had become more than an eye. It was a living weapon of information, capable of processing and distributing data at a rate that defied comprehension. Every piece of captured alien technology became another node in a rapidly expanding network of resistance. The Vorax command ship received the first wave of exposed communications, centuries of conquest, millions of subjugated civilizations, a systematic approach to galactic management that had remained hidden for generations. "They're not conquerors," Area explained the Global Resistance Network. "They're parasites, and we're about to cut them out." Maria Santos, the community organizer from Sao Paulo, had transformed her resistance network into a global information distribution system. What had begun as a local survival strategy was now a critical component of humanity's counteroffensive. The aliens had voted to enslave Earth. Now they would learn the cost of that decision. Karma Sherpa's village continued to dance. But now, their dance was a message, a warning, a promise. Humanity was coming. The first surrender came not with a white flag, but with a quantum transmission that trembled with desperation. High Counselor Dryax of the Vorax Imperium stared at the communication interfaces with a growing sense of something the species had never experienced before: genuine fear. The human counteroffensive had done more than just resist. It had systematically dismantled the very foundations of galactic power structures that had existed for millennia. Transmission incoming, the ship's AI announced, its typically emotionless voice carrying an almost imperceptible hint of uncertainty. The message was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. Not a demand, not a threat, simply a comprehensive, meticulously documented record of every conquest, every subjugation, every hidden atrocity committed by the Interstellar Council, and humanity was offering a choice. Dr. Aria Chen watched the global communication network with Marcus and Jake, understanding the true complexity of the moment. This wasn't about victory. This was about fundamentally reshaping galactic civilization. They're not just asking for surrender, Aria explained. They're offering a complete restructuring of interstellar relations. The surrenders began to cascade. Not all at once, but in a rippling wave that exposed the fragility of the alien power structure. Species that had been conquered generations ago suddenly found themselves with unprecedented documentation of their own histories. Communication networks that had been tightly controlled began to break open. Vikram Meta's communication infrastructure proved to be the key. What had started as a survival network had become the most sophisticated information distribution system in galactic history. Each transmission carried not just information, but context. Not just data, but understanding. The Crystalline Collective was the first major power to fully break. Their rigid, logic-based society couldn't withstand the comprehensive exposure of their historical actions. Entire governmental structures began to collapse from within, unable to maintain the fiction of their supposed superiority. Maria Santos discovered something extraordinary. The resistance networks she had built in the favelas of Sao Paulo were now being studied by diplomatic strategists as a new model of organizational structure. Adaptive, fluid, impossible to completely control. "We're not negotiating surrender," Jake Rodriguez noted during a strategy meeting. "We're offering a reset." The quantum HFY had become something beyond its original design. It was now processing diplomatic communications at a rate and depth that made traditional negotiation look like children's games. Each transmission was a multi-dimensional chess move, considering not just immediate outcomes, but potential galactic consequences decades into the future. Karmic Sherpa's village, the same one that had first begun dancing to confuse alien surveillance, now became a critical diplomatic center. Their understanding of community, of adaptation, of survival became a model for interstellar negotiations. The Vorax Imperium's surrender was the most dramatic. Not a single transmission, but a series of increasingly desperate communications that revealed the complete breakdown of their hierarchical system. Species that had been under their control for generations were now rising up, armed with documentation, with understanding, with hope. "We offer mercy," Aria Chen's diplomatic transmission read. But mercy is not weakness. It is the most advanced form of strength. The galactic map was being redrawn, not through conquest, but through a comprehensive exposure of truth. Humanity had done what no species had ever accomplished before. They had weaponized understanding. 5 years after the invasion, the Galactic Reconstruction Summit convened in a place that would have been unimaginable just half a decade earlier. Geneva, not because of its historical diplomatic significance, but because it represented something more profound, a testament to human innovation and resilience. Dr. Aria Chen stood at the center of a holographic chamber that represented every known spacefaring civilization. Futuristic, now evolved beyond any traditional understanding of artificial intelligence, projected intricate negotiation matrices that danced like living constellations around her. "We're not here to punish," Aria began, her voice translated simultaneously into 237 different linguistic and communication protocols. "We're here to rebuild." The summit was unlike any diplomatic gathering in galactic history. Representatives weren't seated in hierarchical arrangements. Instead, they stood in fluid, adaptive networks, a physical manifestation of the new interstellar philosophy that humanity had introduced. Jake Rodriguez, now serving as a key diplomatic strategist, watched from the sidelines. The military veteran understood something fundamental. True victory wasn't about conquest. It was about transformation. The Vorax Imperium's delegation, once proud conquerors, now humbled participants, presented their historical archives. Each record of past subjugation was meticulously examined, not for retribution, but for understanding. Vikram Meta's communication networks ensured that every species had a voice, that every historical trauma was acknowledged. Marcus Chen had developed a quantum archival system that didn't just store information, it contextualized it. Historical records became living documents, capable of being understood from multiple perspectives simultaneously. Maria Santos had brought representatives from the resistance networks that had first emerged in the favelas of Sao Paulo. Their community-building strategies were now being studied as a revolutionary model of interstellar cooperation. Karma Sherpa's indigenous community representatives demonstrated adaptive governance models that challenged every previous understanding of political structure. Their approach, fluid, responsive, deeply connected to collective wisdom, became a critical component of the new galactic protocols. Phacoionics had become more than an AI. It was a mediator, a translator, a living repository of collective understanding. Its quantum processing capabilities allowed for negotiations that considered not just immediate outcomes, but potential consequences centuries into the future. Sovereignty is not about control, Aria explained, her presentation revealing the comprehensive research that had led to this moment. It's about collective potential. The new galactic charter that emerged was nothing like previous agreements. It wasn't a treaty of submission or conquest. It was a living document, capable of adapting, of growing, of understanding. Species that had been conquered for generations found themselves not just liberated, but empowered. The communication networks developed during the resistance became the foundation of a new form of interstellar cooperation. Jake Rodriguez understood the true significance of what was happening. This wasn't just a diplomatic summit. This was the moment humanity redefined the very concept of civilization. As the holographic projections settled, Aria looked out over the assembled representatives. The species that had been voted to be enslaved had become the architects of a new galactic understanding. They had been underestimated. They had been challenged. They had emerged not just victorious, but transformative. Humanity had changed everything.